Hey, if you'd like to earn CEUs for this webinar, join the Safeopedia community at the link in the description below. Now on to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Whether you're joining us from across the globe or right next door, we're honored you're spending your time with us today. My name's Scott Cuthbert from Safeopedia, and our mission is to support and uplift safety leaders and everyone dedicated to safety with the knowledge, resources, and community they need to help make their workplaces safer. Before we start, I just wanted to say thank you. Your work often happens behind the scenes, but the impact you have on our families, communities, and organizations is profound. Thank you for everything you do and keeping people safe. Today's webinar's title is OSHA Heat Hazard NEP. The inspections are here. Are you prepared? The webinar has been made possible with the support of Squincher, a preferred manufacturer member of the AD Safety Network. Our presenter today is Bubba Walford from Squincher. If you've seen any of the Squincher webinars in the past, you'll be familiar with Bubba and his wealth of knowledge. And he's going to walk us through how to strengthen heat illness prevention programs to reduce injuries, protect workers' health, and align with evolving regulatory expectations. Drop your questions in the Q&A or in the comment sections, and we'll do our best to get to all of them today. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce the presenter, Bubba Walford.
Thanks, Scott. And welcome, everybody. Appreciate you taking your time today on a Thursday to learn a little bit more about the NEP and our proposed federal standard. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what has happened since the NEP was released. Really, one of the main purposes of the standard is to increase inspections across the country. Out of the NEP was born the heat rule, the federal heat standard. We're going to talk about this, where that is. At this point, we do not have a standard yet, but it is in the process. What the roles of electrolytes are in preventing heat stress, and then finally, a little information on kidney health. What is an NEP? What is a National Emphasis Program? When OSHA sees that there's a hazard that is causing over and above injuries and deaths, this is their way of addressing that, and it increases their emphasis, their attention, and quite frankly, the number of the feet on the street that is going to enforce these rules, which are enforceable through the general duty clause, since we don't have a standard. They released the National Emphasis Program on outdoor and indoor heat hazards, and notice that's outdoor and indoor. There are several states that we'll talk about in a little while, Cal OSHA being one of them, that have had state regs for years, but they were only outdoor. So this is both outdoor and indoor. The NEP launched April 8th of 2022. It expired last year. They did extend it. We have not gotten notification from OSHA that they're extending it this year because it's only a one-year extension. And we're days away. So we're waiting. I'm anticipating that they will extend it, but no news yet. As I kind of mentioned before, this creates a nationwide enforcement mechanism to inspect workplaces for heat-related hazards, and we'll talk about how they do that. They want employers to protect their workers from hazards in a formal method, and we'll talk about that. Also, kind of a game changer. There's never been a heat threshold in their recommendations in the past, but with the NEP, it established an 80-degree threshold. That's 80-degree index. So take the the actual temperature and the humidity level. Use your index chart or your app, your OSHA app will figure that. That's where, when they say heat priority days, that's when they're walking into your facility or onto your job site. That is when everything that they're asking you to do must be in place. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas Day, like a lot of times in Mississippi, it exceeds 80 degrees in December easily. Also, the NEP, a little bit different from the federal standard, is there's about 70 high-risk target industries. Why now? Well, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. They've seen a spike in the number of injuries and deaths over the last few years. One thing that I really didn't know is heat stress is the number one cause of death of all natural disasters, heat-related events in the U.S. That takes into consideration hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, fire, wind, whatever. And again, that surprised me. Also, climate change is here, and since 2015, consecutively, we've had the hottest summers on record. 3,500 on average heat-related illnesses every year, over 38 deaths every year. Also, when they look at who are the recordables of who are injured and who actually has died, is the numbers are higher for minorities, which is also a concern. So again, they launched the NEP to increase enforcement throughout the country with targeted industries to try to get people in line to reduce the numbers that we just looked at. All right, so what do we need to do when it's 80 degrees and we have an inspector walk on site? Have a dedicated person and a written plan. Over my 18 and a half years of doing this, I can tell you prior to the NEP, this was not the case. So I had to work with my customers to establish this. Have a dedicated person, have that written plan that's going off of what the NEP is asking you to do. Hazard identification, knowing where the hazard is and when and even when it's coming. The old program that came out of Cal OSHA many years ago that everybody's familiar with, I'm sure, is water, rest, and shade. I would like to see that change to hydration, rest, and shade, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Acclimatization is a big one with all of the turnover in the workforce today, bringing somebody into a hot situation, whether it's inside or outside. We must have a plan to ease them into that situation where the hazard's present. That can last 2, 3, even 4 weeks. So in your written plan, how does that work? How are you easing your employees into the hazard? Also, modified work schedules. We might work more in the morning, more in the afternoon, or early evening, and not so much in the middle part, hottest part of the day. With OSHA, it's always training. That's something that we're big on at Squincher. We are dedicated to our Hydration 365 program that's been around for over 10 years to help you navigate OSHA and get your folks home safe at night and hydrated so they can be, good fathers, mothers, uncles, brothers, sisters, whatever, that they're not suffering from heat stress at home and they're not productive at home. We want our employees to be productive at work and also productive at home, and that all is around health and safety, which we're responsible for while they are with us. Also, an emergency response program. When we see that somebody is suffering from the results of heat stress, symptoms of heat stress, there's got to be a plan. We get them into a cool area. If we have an infirmary or we have a nurse on site, how does that work? And hopefully we're going to avoid dialing 911 and taking them to the hospital. That, in that case, this completely failed. So that's what we're trying to avoid, obviously. So I mentioned the 70 high-risk industries. These are just some. I'm not going to go over every single one of these. These are the ones you would expect. But one interesting point, warehousing, storage, DCs, if you will, distribution centers. We've really seen distribution centers pop up across the country over the past 10 or 15 years. I mean, they're everywhere. And OSHA actually established in 2023, July of 2023, a separate NEP for warehousing, storage, and DCs. So the reason they did that is they were seeing higher numbers within those industries, or that industry, with heat stress. That expires in July. We'll see what happens with that. No word on that either. So ocean inspections, again, a little bit redundant, but they're going to want to see your written plan when they come on site. And also keep in mind when it's over 80 degrees, they might be coming on site to do an inspection for something else, slip, trip, or fall, whatever it may be. They can, when it's over that 80-degree mark, they can roll that heat stress inspection right in there. And they do that frequently. They probably do that more than just coming in and doing just a focus on heat stress. Do you have water? That's the number one thing they're looking at. Also, electrolytes on hand. They do not require that through the NEP. They don't even require that or recommend that in the federal standard, proposed federal standard. But I can tell you through experience, if you are going over and above and you do have electrolytes available at your hydration stations along with your fresh drinking water, it goes a long way. And maybe even a popsicle, again, goes a long way. Do you have breaks scheduled for workers that are working in high heat? And all this has to be in the written plan. Do you have scheduled heat stress trainings? Do you keep records of events that have happened regarding heat stress? Do you record the conditions on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis of what is the index on a daily basis, and maybe even department to department, because that can change based on other outside factors. The NOAA weather alert system. Or are you keeping up with that? Do you have like I said before, do you have areas in your plant, maybe they're welding, maybe there's a particular piece of equipment that puts off a lot of heat. So that area has to be treated differently than an area that may not be as hot as that. So here we are with the federal heat rule. Again, this is proposed and it was published August 30th of 2024 in the Federal Register as a notice of proposed rulemaking. So from that point to January the 14th, there was a public comment period. I actually participated in several of those stakeholder meetings that OSHA had, primarily with small businesses, and getting their feedback, actual business owners, managers, talking about how they feel this new federal standard would affect them. And I can tell you it was negative. They do not want it in its form. They think it's over-regulated, it's over-burdensome for small businesses. So middle of June, OSHA conducted a hearing I am a member of ISEA. Some of you may be familiar with that organization. Most of you probably are. I am on the heat stress committee for hydration, and we answered questions in that hearing, and I was there to promote electrolytes being at least recommended in the standard, which they're not now. So we'll continue to build that case as we wait on the rule to be passed. As I mentioned earlier, OSHA continues, whether we have an NEP or not, they will continue to enforce their recommendations on heat stress prevention through their general duty clause. I want to stress that. Even if they do not renew the NEP, I guarantee you that they're still going to move forward with it. Cat's out of the bag, if you will. I've already mentioned this NEP, the extension. The NEPs are for 3 years. We're on our 4th year now. So April 8th, it goes out. I can tell you what we have seen since the NEP came out is more and more states are taking it upon themselves to address this issue. California, Washington, Minnesota, and Oregon all had state regs in place prior to 2022. Maryland, Nevada, Colorado have all adopted state regs since then. Also, there's about 13 more states. Florida's one of them. New York's one of them that are coming on board, I think, in the next year with also, they're not waiting around on the federal government, basically, is what it says. Another factor that might slow the approval of this rule, might slow it down a little bit, is Representative Mark Messer in November introduced the Heat Workforce Standards Act of 2025 to reduce the regulations in the proposed rule. Back to what I was saying with the Small Business Administration. They got his ear, and that's the result of what's happening. So this, if you're a fan of the proposed rule as it stands now, this is not good news. So we talked about what the NEP requires. Now let's talk about what that proposed standard requires, which is not law now. Again, this is, it's on the books as in recorded, but this is what we could expect. Developed a heat injury and illness prevention plan, HIIPP, ID hazards in both outdoor, indoor work sites. And one thing I can caution everybody on this is, let's just say you've got a heavy manufacturing facility and there's 500 people in the building. You've got your heat stress program. OSHA comes on board comes to your facility when they're walking in. There's 2 guys on the grounds cutting grass. You roll out the program, everything looks great, and then they ask, where's the program for the 2 people that are outside, because that's a different set of conditions. That I see that a lot. One person, it does not matter. You've got to have your program tailored to every single condition that may be present outside or inside. With OSHA, that 80-degree, with the NEP, the 80-degree trigger is the only trigger they have. This new standard has a high heat trigger, which is at 90 degrees. So the initial trigger, same as the NEP at 80, and then the high heat trigger at 90-degree index. I've already talked about emergency response plans, same with this. The training, same. Maintain your records, indoor and outdoor monitoring. Ensure that all requirements are at no cost to the employee. That means if you're touting or you're listing providing electrolytes as part of your program, but you're providing that product in vending machines and they have to pay for it, that does not count. That will not be considered as part of your prevention program if they have to pay for it. It'd be no different if they had to pay for safety glasses, earplugs, etc. And again, another change is it's not the 70 top industries. This applies to all industries. I was just in Dallas, Texas, actually this week, and I was at a risk manage risk. What was the name? It was a high. I can't even think of it now. Anyway, risk management conference for restaurants. People like Whataburger, Wendy's, Noodles, Little Caesars, all of their safety teams were there. They had a talk on this subject. So OSHA will be walking into restaurants, into the kitchens, looking at what they're doing for their indoor and outdoor employees, because they talked heavily about the risk that is posed for their employees that are taking orders outside in the sun. So that's something that has evolved from all of this emphasis. Okay, so that 80-degree trigger, again, under proposed rule, provide cool drinking water. They do not even recommend electrolytes. Breaks, do you have scheduled breaks with cooling measures? Indoor and outdoor, I apologize, should have been outdoor in there too. Area controls, as we kind of mentioned that earlier. The acclimatization, which we talked about for new employees and returning employees that have been on leave for extended amount of time. Paid breaks. This is one the Small Business Association absolutely pushed back on. And Messer, the bill or the deal that he rolled out, that's knocking that out. That's one of the first things knocks out. And also having that effective two-way communication, that we're all talking the same language, because we understand through our training, whether it's employees or supervisors, that we know what those symptoms and signs are of heat stress. And once we see that, because we're going to utilize the buddy system, right? We're going to be aware of our surroundings and our fellow employees. We're going to get them to where they need to be to address those symptoms. The high heat trigger, mandatory rest breaks, 15 minutes every 2 hours. Again, this heavily pushed back on by the small business guys. Make sure you understand that we just mentioned signs and symptoms of heat-related illness. Put up posters. We'll actually show an example of that here in a minute. Signage that alerts people that it's over 80 degrees or it's over 90 degrees, whatever the hazard is. Let them know that so that they can fall back on their training and they can prevent an injury from happening. If anything over 120 degrees, it's mandatory that you have warning signs making people aware of that extreme hazard. As mentioned earlier, this is an example of some signage, that initial trigger, 80 to 90, 90 to 100, the high heat trigger, and up from there. They also like to see, is again, with your signage, is post what the actual temperature by area or department is. We actually have, I've created 2.5 by 3 foot laminated heat stress awareness posters that are dry laminate, so you can actually write what the hazard is for the day and the 5-day forecast, what it's going to be like. So we don't only pay attention to what we're dealing with today, but what's coming, right? We got to understand what's coming so that we can prepare our employees. So what are electrolytes, and why am I so hell-bent in that they be included is at least as recommendations as other organizations have done, as I'll show you here in a minute, in this federal standard? Well, it's simple. You don't naturally replace electrolytes. They're minerals found in the blood that one of the main things that it does is prevents cramping. Cramping in our industry is catastrophic. Somebody has severe leg cramp, they're on a side-by-side, say in a steel yard, they floorboard the side-by-side, they run over somebody and kill them. That's actually happened. So cramping is one of the main things we're trying to prevent. Sodium, potassium are what we're really trying to get back in the body that we're losing through sweating, urination, breathing, all those things. Something else that I found a lot of my customers have brought to my attention is water that will say, I don't think this one does, but it will say fortified with electrolytes. Then you turn it around and look on the ingredient panel, and there's no sodium, there's no potassium, there's nothing there. So be careful with the products that you're using, whether they're water or even their other electrolyte products. Know what's in them, because having very high levels of sodium, very high levels of potassium, that could cause problems as well. So what does OSHA say about hydration? We know that they're not including, even recommending in their NEP or their proposed standard, but they do recognize that the military has used electrolyte replacement for years. They recognize NOSH. They recommend employers provide electrolyte products. They will point to the fact that because a lot of electrolytes have sugar, that they don't want their employees ingesting excess amounts of sugar, maybe because of type 1 and type 2 diabetics are pretty prevalent now in the workplace. They also say that electrolytes aren't really needed as a supplement because you get it through the adequate meals, because we're eating such a great diet every day, right? Hot dogs and hamburgers. Yeah, that's good. They do recognize that preventing heat cramps, electrolytes do that, and also treating to stop heat cramps, electrolytes are prevalent. It's mixed messaging. You go to their heat illness prevention page, which I've copied here, and you'll see, particularly 2 hours of heavy work when it's hot, the worker's sweating. It is recommended that we use electrolytes. And again, their message, most people can restore electrolytes through regular meals. I disagree with them. ANSI, right after the NEP, came out with the A10.50 rule, which is a heat standard for them. They do recommend using electrolytes 2 hours, exceeding 2 hours of heavy activity. So again, this is something that I've used to make my argument with OSHA's. ANSI's recommending it. NOSH is recommending it. And they rely heavily on these two organizations to make standards and even to improve standards. So hopefully we'll get this done. OSHA, no different from ANSI, after 2 hours prolonged work and you're sweating, you should use electrolytes. What they've said, though, they've gone a little bit further in the concentration of electrolytes, carbohydrates, or sugars do not exceed 8% by volume. There are a lot of products out there that are categorized as emergency response, and you know what I'm talking about. If you want to know what an emergency response product is, look on the drink that you're drinking, the packet, or if it's ready to drink or whatever. If it's exceeding 500 milligrams of sodium per serving, that's an extreme product. I'm not knocking those products, but those products, if you read on the instructions on how to use it, most of them say 1 per day. So they're designed to get you out of that situation. You're severely dehydrated. You're severely depleted of sodium and potassium, and this gets it back quick. What we'd rather you do is use a balanced product, which would be a Squencher, Gatorade, Powerade. Those type drinks are more balanced. Squencher's more balanced than all of them. but those are still considered normal balanced products. And when you're serving the masses, the last thing I want to do is a safety individual, particularly your squincher, is give them something that's considered a supplement, extreme ingredients. And one of the first things that product is going to say, like products you get from GNC, before you use this product, consult with a physician. Well, I don't have time for 1,000 people to go see a doctor. So we're gonna use a balanced product. I'll close with this. I came upon this several months ago, and there's a lot out there on dehydration and kidney health. And Roxana Chickas, a PhD in Florida, had this article, "Heat is a Moral Threat," published in the Washington Post back in 2023. And what she did is she tested the effectiveness of electrolytes. So she had two groups. She had one group that was working in the heat. They only drank water. The other group was drinking water and electrolytes. She found that the group that did not use electrolytes, they only drank water, 23% of those individuals had injury to their kidneys. That blew my mind. So if you don't think electrolytes are important in staying hydrated in a healthy manner and to keep your organs in brain and everything working effectively, you're just misinformed. I appreciate it. Hopefully, maybe some of you learned a little bit from this. I am here and I'm willing to work with anybody to help you through this process. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Bubba. That was some great information. Before we turn it over, was there any final thoughts or key takeaways for people that you wanted to leave them with today, and then we'll get to the questions?
Yeah, I think the one thing is we've been experiencing a heat wave from Texas all the way to the West Coast. I hope everybody's safe and that you've made it through this. Programs like we've talked about will get you through those heat waves. It looks like we may have another hot summer throughout the whole country. So really be focused on hydration and understand, dive deeper than what I've done today and get help. We're here to help. Squincher, unlike a lot of electrolyte manufacturers out there, we don't just sell product. We sell a program. We want to help. We look at this as a PPE product, internal PPE. PPE is no good and will not prevent injuries if your workforce does not know how to use it. They don't understand the signs and the symptoms. So we can help you with that. We do extensive training. The collateral that we provide, it's all value add. A lot of my competitors will charge for that. We do not. So we're committed to helping you get your folks home safe every day.
Yeah, and I mean we've been working together a long time, and it's always been about education and keeping people safe first and foremost. So we share that approach and love that about you guys.
Thank you.
So we have a few questions in the Q&A. If you have any more questions, just drop them in there. We'll do our best to get to them. But Dave, hey David, how's it going? And with his first question is, will THA be sufficient for indoor or outdoor tasks if it addresses the heat hazard?
I didn't understand the first part of the question. The T what now?
THA?
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh,
THA.
Needs to jump back in and task hazard analysis.
Oh, I'm sorry. And so repeat the question.
Will a task hazard analysis be sufficient for the indoor or outdoor tasks if it addresses the heat hazard?
I don't know the answer to that question. If we can get his email or he can email me, I will get it. It's a good question, but I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he had a follow-up question. So David said, can the inside and outside conditions be addressed in one document, or will two documents be required?
No, I think you can address it in one document, very, very similar that you would address your indoor facility differently by department.
Right.
So we almost look at it as outdoor as another department, right? So I've never seen a one size fits all hydration prevention plan ever. So we treat it as another department, that being outdoors.
Right. Makes sense. So Michelle's asking, I did not know about the trigger. I'd like to learn more. Gonna look into that. I guess that's more of a comment than a question.
And again, what is in effect now, and I don't want to confuse everybody. So when we talk about the National Emphasis Program, that's what OSHA is using to enforce right now under the General Duty Clause. And that 80-degree trigger is an index. So it's not just 80 degrees. They're figuring the index with the humidity. That's when they say we have the right to come on and investigate your facility, and we will. I can tell you, it's probably about an average of 100, maybe citations so far annually, and upwards of 500 to 600 hazard alert letters, warnings. So they are giving people a chance to kind of ramp up. They're really not writing a tremendous amount of citations. It's more warnings. But that's that 80 degree is where you have to be locked and loaded with that written program, dedicated person, and your training, acclimatization, all those things have to be formally written down and acted on.
Yeah, that's a great reminder.
The 90-degree trigger is not in effect right now, so don't worry about that. It's just the 80-degree.
80-degree. Robin's asking, what are some good strategies to measure and track indoor manufacturing conditions? That's a big one.
Yeah, so a lot of people will use the mini weather stations and put them in different departments. They'll use the wet bulb method. The military is the one that started using that, the wet bulb temperature gauge that measures heat index or humidity. There are other devices, handheld devices that measure heat index that aren't. It's not real expensive. We actually have some of those we use. And then again, make sure you understand the temperature variance in different departments and post that. Again, we've got posters we can send you that have the area to write the heat, it's dry erase that you can write the hazard there. So it's important to monitor every single day by department with some type of device that measures index. You can also utilize the OSHA app that'll give you the index that's in your area. That's a guide to go by, but specifically you need to measure it with some type of tool, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that was a good answer. I'm gonna just, we've got another question here, but just everyone watching again, thanks for joining. I'm gonna drop a link in the comments here, just to our the Safeopedia community. It's free to join, and we'll continue to have these sorts of conversations, share, resources, and connect with each other in the community again to keep these conversations going, every week and every month. So
And Scott, if I can jump in, I'm glad you said that because again, we've been partners with Safeopedia and they have helped us, Jamie and Scott have helped us build this platform. And you can go to Safepedia. You can also go to squincherindustrial.com, and you'll have to register as a distributor, which is not a problem. Even if you're an end user, you can do that and get a password. In all of our collateral, white papers, articles, all of that is there. And I think they're at both sites. So utilize that.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's all on Safepedia or on Squincher and free. Right? Jamie added in comments.
Yes. Everything we do is value added. Everything.
Yeah, and Khan was asking a question, but I think it's he's outside of the U.S., so obviously the NEP won't apply, but he's just talking about textile industries, production workers that are 8 hours for some factories and not provided fans or cooling systems due to electrical shortages or electricity shortages. In Miramar, I think is where he's at, and for that they will have any prevention plan for heat stress to workers and the workplace. So I think he's got a good takeaway from today's session, regardless of the NEP that's in effect. So
One thing I can tell you we've seen. I cover North America, so Canada, Mexico, Central America, and was just speaking with an individual at a show a couple of weeks ago from Mexico, and he represented some U.S. manufacturers that have plants down there, and I just asked him, are they expanding their program from the U.S. to Mexico, even though there are not regs down there? Are they consistently, from a safety standpoint, still doing that, even though it's not required? And he said, absolutely. So we see that a lot too, is, even though they're across the border and it's not regulated, they're doing it because they know that's what's the right thing to do to keep their employers safe and to maintain employees. We have to take care of our workforce. Turnover is crazy out there right now. So take care of them, man. Give them a squincher pop. Give them a drink. It can go a long way because it's going to make them more productive. It's going to make them feel better, and they're going to think, you know what? Maybe they do care about it. And I think that goes a long way. I really do. I know it does. If we do it here at Squincher.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nicholas was asking, does your policy need to address potential sudden temperature spikes? Like if a fire breaks out, conditions change within the facility.
I think that, if you look at the 120, when I talked about the 120-degree mark, where I think it was, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was 15. They have to get out every 15 minutes. Understanding at what temperature you got to close it down, right? I think that I don't know the answer to the question, but I do know over the 120. You're talking about extensive breaks, getting them in and getting them out on every hour. That they're not going to be in extreme heat more than 15, 20, 30 minutes. So I think in the case of a fire or something like that, I know our policy here at Squinchers will evacuate.
Yeah, I think that I think Nicholas was thinking about like internal staff, fire brigade, and those sorts of situations where you're going to be exposed to those sudden spikes, and I think you kind of touched on that. So,
and let me say this too, that there is, as far as maybe I misunderstood his question a little bit. As far as first responders go, and particularly firefighters, there is a separate reg or standard that's being looked at for that. I don't have a whole lot of information on that. I'm looking into it, but there is a separate piece that goes along with first responders and particularly firemen.
Right. Great. Well, those were all the questions that we had. Like I said, I dropped the Safepedia community link in the chat. It's free to join. We can continue the conversation there. We do have monthly meetups where we bring speakers in like Bubba to address these sorts of issues and have conversations, more of a ask me anything session than a presentation. So definitely click the link, join the community if you haven't already. And we'll be sending out a follow-up email as usual in the next couple of days that will include the recording of the webinar and the presentation slides for your reference. So you'll be able to revisit and share with other people within your organization. And once again, a big thank you to everyone for joining us today, for the important work that you do and keeping our coworkers and our workplaces safe. Thank you so much. And special thanks for Squincher for sponsoring today and for Bubba for sharing his expertise. So thanks, everyone. Take care and stay safe.